there's a lot of hostility about religion and about prayer and about the practice of faith. And part of what inspired this podcast was that we had all read the book The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller, and we wanted to show the relationship or talk about that relationship, actually not show it, talk about that relationship between science and religion. Now, what was really fascinating to me about both of you having that conversation is that this is your second profession. Like you had other vocations before you became priest. And one of you, was in science and one of you was a teacher. And I thought it would be really interesting for our audience to hear more about that part of your life so that we could start to really understand your thinking and the questioning that you're bringing to this larger conversation about the relationship between religion, spirituality, and science.
So I think it's unfortunate that there has been a dichotomy between science and religion, and I don't think that it is helpful at all. I think that, first of all, our focus should be about spirituality. Through growing spiritually, growing in wisdom and in consciousness so that we can be more loving people. And some people do that through a religion. Religion comes out of our culture and where we grew up, and so we can live it out through our religion. But really it's essentially about something spiritual within us. And I think the beauty of science is that it helps us to be able to see that in our world and to measure it and to play with it. We can use science. We can say, well, what about this? And find ways to test it and make discoveries so that we can understand. And what I love about Lisa Miller's book and the science that she presents is that it has cast a new light on our ability to know that spiritual practices, when we pray or meditate or walk meaningfully and intentionally in nature, when we sing or when we chant, that it makes a difference, that it is healing, and that it can heal people who are very unwell. It can be protective and just offer all of us a more awakened and enlivened and wonderful life. So I think science is wonderful, and in fact, my first degree was a science degree.
Really? And what was your first degree in?
So I did a Bachelor of Science at the University of Toronto, and I studied biology and psychology, and I did a specialist in exceptionality and human learning.
So both of you are scientists. Mm-hmm. How fascinating. And how did you make the transition from science to being inspired to become a priest?
So the whole ministry thing was actually first. So I can remember as a young child, a child of 8 or 9, taking music lessons and discovering that there was a Bible study that my music teacher held in her home after I took my lesson, and wanting to participate in that. And in grade 9, talking to the guidance counselor about what do I need to do, to become a leader in the faith community. And really it was not at all encouraged. And at that time I was worshiping in a Roman Catholic church, which was beautiful. I love the sacraments of the church, but it wasn't a community that was going to lift me up as a female to leadership. And so I pursued other things.
So you always felt a calling towards being a leader within church life, within faith. Mm-hmm. Wow, fascinating. And when did you meet? When did you both meet?
So at this point, I'll say we've known each other a very long time. I've known her since she was 10 years old. I won't tell you how many years that is because that would give away her age. But what I will say...
But how old were you? Just so it's okay.
15?
Yes.
But we weren't dating.
Okay, yes, I understand. Okay, just because, as soon as you say religion I know. People start thinking weird things.
The reason why I point out how long I've known her is that what she just said to you, it took many years of us being married and together before I ever learned that about her, because it was something she had to resolve for herself before we even had a chance to get together. So I wasn't aware of that. And likewise, I was on a different path of faith, having been grown up in the United Church. I was introduced to the Roman Catholic faith, and I decided that I wanted to become a follower in the Roman Catholic Church, and that meant I had to go through Roman Catholic initiation for adults classes, which at the time was very formalized and was over many weeks. And during that process, I felt a call to become a priest. And while I was going through that process, I was talking to the priest who was leading this, and he had me go away and he said, I want you to pray and I want you to decide whether you should be a father or a dad. But you can't be both, because this is the Roman Catholic Church and you can't be married. You must be celibate if you are going to be a priest. So I went away, I prayed about it. He went away and prayed about it with his community. And when we got back together, we agreed that I really wanted to be a dad and a priest. I couldn't do that, so I should just be a dad. And so I put that behind me, and we got together and we had our children. And after living a life that was wonderful and fulsome, but also not really fulfilling the way we felt called to live, we finally, every year we would have our summer vacations with our kids, and we would walk the beach at Sauble Beach, and we would talk about our lives and reflect on how things were going and what we thought we should do differently. And one of those walks led us to both learn from each other that we had felt this calling for a long time, but neither of us knew that. So,
and yet we were both very involved in church the whole time. We were youth ministers and in part of every community, every committee you could think of in our church.
Everything from raising money to build churches to leading youth and children's ministry and our poor priest had no idea what to do with us, because I was married, couldn't be a priest. Sue Ann was a woman, she couldn't be a priest, but he also believed we were called to that as well. So it led us toward a very different path.
Yes.
And
were you in the Anglican Church at that point? You
No.
were you were in the United.
Roman Catholic.
Oh, so you were
we were both Roman Catholic
you
at
were
that
both
point.
Roman
Yes.
Catholic at that point, but you were participating in the church. You were active members, and you felt a deep and growing, desire to find ways to serve.
Yes.
Beyond, well, as ordained ministers in the church, because
Right.
as Sue Ann said, we had already done just about everything else one can do in the church and not be ordained. So.
And what were you doing at the time?
So I was working at a technology company at the time. So I started out as a computer engineer at IBM, and then I evolved and did many different things, but stayed within that technology field in the same company, actually. We became a new company, but I stayed in the same location doing the same kind of work. But we spent most of our time doing stuff that was spiritual, stuff that was related to the church outside of our work. And for me, science is simply the way that we can study, look at, understand, discover whatever it is that already exists in the universe. And the wonderful thing about science is you have this feeling about something, so then you decide to test that feeling to see if it's true, and you may determine it is, you might determine it isn't, and then somewhere down the road, even if you determine something, someone else will have a new idea, and they'll test what you were saying you thought you knew, and they find out that maybe we know something different again and again. And one of the reasons why we were so interested in Lisa Miller's book was because she started in a different place, but she had a sense that there was something more. And then science was able to answer that for her. And other people also studied that, science, and were able to determine the same thing. So,
did you feel that you had to justify your faith and that sensation, that feeling of that you're part of something bigger with science? Or did you feel like science was born out of your faith? Like, which one came first, chicken or the egg kind of thing?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of being immersed and interested and inspired by God's world.
I don't think either of us have ever lived any point in our lives and not felt a connection with God. For us, that's who that higher power is. Both of us were born into families where, being part of a church was just, what you did. And we were involved. And as Sue Ann said, she started, being at least attached to a Bible study at a very young age. And we both were in Sunday school and things like that when we were children. So, but that fascination with the world around us, I think, was something that was also, started at a very young age.
Wow. I guess, in Lisa Miller's book, one of the things that she's identifying and I mean throughout all of her work, is that this is not an anomaly, and it's not actually unusual, even though our society sort of represents faith and religion in a way that it's like outside of science, that we are hardwired neurologically. There's a space in us that requires spirituality, that it requires attention to our spirit. Can you speak to that? Like, did you know that before you read the book, or is this something that was innate in you from, an early age?
I think that particular thing was new, but often you sense something, you kind of know something, and then somebody else puts words to it or facts to it.
Yes.
And you think, yes, because you had that sense that that's the way it was. And I just believe that we are spiritual beings. Not only is it in our neurology, like it's in our genes, right?
What do you mean by that?
Just like our eye color, our height, other facets of our phenotype and genotype, being spiritual is in our genes. And that's why when we don't live out our spirituality, we can become very sick. When we suppress it and we ignore it, we lose our health. And I think that's part of the struggle that many people are having now in our world, where it is cast aside.
Yes.
And being treated like it's nonsense.
Yes.
And people are so focused on achieving. It's
and
about money and
consuming,
power and stuff and things that aren't healthy and things that don't matter.
I'm gonna, I'm a novice here, so I'm gonna ask you to break it down for me a bit more, because when you say that it's like your eye color or your hair, it's in our genes. What does it mean to have that spirituality is in our genes? Like, what does that mean?
So Kenneth Kendler has done twin studies, and according to the studies that he has done, in terms of the innateness of spirituality, it's about 29%. And then the other 71% is how we nurture our spiritual selves.
I see. That explains a lot about myself. But Jeff, what like, can you add to that? What's your perspective on it? Because I know when I actually am the one who told you about this book.
You are.
Because
thank goodness for that.
I'm always seeking. And I was fascinated by the fact that there was this relationship between science and the proving that there's a neurological space in our brain that is for spirituality. Like, what did it make you feel like when you read that, when you saw the evidence, not just read it, but when you saw the evidence of it?
So to echo what Sue Ann said, I think for a long time, and we had learned it from spiritual leaders who had taught us that humans are, we have a physical self, we have a cognitive self, and we have a spiritual self. So body, mind, and spirit. And all of those things are created, and we have to nurture those things. But then it's how she opens her book, where she talks about doing these brain scans and no one knowing what the results were going to be and everyone being surprised by it. But what it does is it supports this idea that our brains are functioning differently, like the structure of our brain and how it works, when we are catering to our spiritual selves and when we are doing spiritual practices. And when what Sue-Ann was talking about with Kenneth Kendler, that didn't surprise us, but it was a lovely discovery to realize that it was what we had felt in our bones was the reality for us, that this is something that is, as we would look at it, God had created this part of us, that we were wired for this. There was natural pathways for this. Didn't surprise us, but it really, really excited us.
Do you think that you recognized that in each other when you first, started to find each other and come to love each other and know each other? Do you think you just without even words, do you think you notice there's something here?
Jeff is just an incredibly warm, genuine person. And I think that is his spirit just shining through. And I think that I appreciated that from a very young age and wanted to be friends, and blossomed into a lot more. And I am so glad that we have had the opportunity to have a beautiful life together and raise children and grandchildren. And actually, we went to seminary together. We both left our jobs and we went to seminary, and we spent 3 years going to the same classes and having conversations in the car on the way to and from, and reading each other's papers and discussing and debating and wondering. And it's been a beautiful experience.
Tell me about that. Like, you went to seminary school together. You were already married for maybe 15, 20 years at that point, right? And okay, we're not sharing numbers. But you had 4 kids at this point.
And just to give you an idea, so 3 of those were teenagers. So that'll help you understand how long we'd been together.
Yes. Okay.
and we actually had 7 because we had 3 foster children at the time, because Jeff and I have been foster parents for many years at that point.
Okay, I see. You see. Okay. Wow. We're gonna need a very long series here. Now, so you quit your jobs.
Yes.
How you quit your jobs to become priest?
Yeah.
Yes.
And when did you say to each other, I need to quit my job. I need to leave I want to become a priest. Like, when did that happen?
So I think what we decided to do was to go to the Roman Catholic Seminary and talk to the Dean of Admissions. And we had this beautiful meeting with the Dean of Admissions.
Whose name will remain to us.
Because what he said to us, word for word, is, I believe you have a genuine calling, but Sue-Ann, you are not going to be ordained in your lifetime. Why don't you go down the street and talk to the Anglicans? And
Stunning.
we did. Same day. We went to Trinity College and we talked to the dean there. And after having a conversation, we decided that we would do 2 things. 1, we would start worshiping in an Anglican church. And 2, we would take 1 course at Trinity College. And we did. We took New Testament together. Yes. And it was during that New Testament course that we resigned from our jobs so that we could go full time.
It was leaping off a cliff. I think that's fair to say.
And growing wings on the way down.
I will say, so Sue-Ann mostly described that. So yes, and I can tell you our teenage children were very worried because Mom and Dad both being unemployed was not something that they thought was going to be a good future for them. And yes, we did have 3 foster children. And while doing that, we were both working part-time jobs while we were going to school full-time as well. And to this day, I don't know how we did it. So we believe, that as people of faith, we believe that God helped us through that time, as well as a lot of people around us who helped us at that time. But I will say this: my boss, when I left Celestica, was not surprised when I told him I was doing this, and was very encouraging, and said, that was just the right thing for me. So there were things people saw in us at the time that didn't surprise them. And I would just say one other thing: Sue-Ann and I both grew up with some very strong spiritual guides. For me, it was my mother. For Sue-Ann, it was her grandmother. People who instilled in us this sense of faith, of community, of love.
Yes.
And that faith also includes that, sometimes you have to take risks and just assume that it will work out.